Hello and welcome to Give Me the Remote, the podcast. This is the 22nd of October 2018 and this is episode 18. My name is John and I am joined in the pod as usual by the sleepy-eyed Sheridan.
Hello. I'm not that sleepy.
Dear audience, you're being spared the sleepy-eyed look. But okay, she's sporting quite the side pony though. So
I'll be staring daggers soon if you don't stop talking about how I look.
I'd say we're ready for action. What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about the Marvelous Mrs Mazal.
Is it Mrs. or Ms?
I don't think they had Ms in the 50s, honey.
Spoilers.
What?
Anyway. Okay, Mrs. Maisel, which won a big swag of Emmys. It's on Amazon Prime. They're building out the Amazon Prime catalogue quite cleverly, but I feel they need just more volume of content.
Yeah, so this was an Amazon-produced, original series, basically.
Yeah, I think most of this stuff is pretty original. You've got to give them that.
Yeah, so they don't seem to pad it out with a lot of other stuff. Maybe Netflix has got
all the rights.
Yeah.
So what do we got? It's sort of like Mad Men for chicks.
I think that's probably doing somewhat too much credit to Mrs. Mazal, but
right.
right off the bat, I know this is what I think. So it's about a woman, Midge Maisel, who is living a fairly idealistic, perfect 50s life with her Upper East Side apartment and husband and 2 kids, and her husband leaves her and she enters the world of stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. That's the plot.
That's pretty much it. Yep. And then, I felt like there were 4 good episodes, 2 at either end, and then there was just a bunch of filler waiting for the rest to happen.
Yeah, so I actually read that what happened... So Amazon paid for 4 episodes.
Yeah, right. There you go. Okay.
And this makes a lot of sense because the first 4 kind of weren't a complete plot line, but obviously they were just trying to get support for the funding, and then would have got the remaining 4 episodes bankrolled. Yeah, and so it does feel like it's bookended by 2 decent episodes on either side.
It's not bad in the middle, I've got to say. It's just a bit meh. Whereas that first episode is sensational, and the stuff towards the end is also pretty good.
I think when the show's good, it's very, very good, but when it's
drifting,
not, it's fairly pedestrian and very unoriginal. I think the parents are actually... So she has... there's a lot of Jewish jokes and Jewish-centered kind of content and storyline.
Yep.
So she has these kind of classically Jewish parents who are kind of bickering all the time. And
yeah, there's this idea that she's so centered around her parents that she managed to convince her husband to buy an apartment in her parents' building.
Yeah. But I think the parents are pretty they're characters you have seen repeatedly before.
I think the mum is. I think the dad, as a physics professor at Columbia University, has got some elements where he's a bit interesting in parts.
I found them quite boring and pedestrian.
There's stuff like when he has to do a security clearance and they bring up her Ms. Maisel's arrests, when the way he internalises that I thought were unusual. So certainly he's never, he knows that his daughter got arrested, but he hasn't raised it with her. Maybe that'll happen in season 2. I don't know. I thought the stuff with Lenny Bruce was weird, and I don't quite understand why they brought a real historic figure. And so for those who don't know, Lenny Bruce was he's rated as like the 3rd greatest comic of all time, American comedian of all time, behind Richard Pryor and someone else. But anyway, so he's very, very highly thought of, and he actually was arrested for this kind of obscenity stuff that they deal with in passing with our protagonist getting arrested for using foul language on stage. honestly feel they probably could have just used a made-up comic. I really don't get why they inserted a historic figure into a fictional story.
Yeah, it's a funny thing too because the show itself isn't very realistic, and maybe this is what they were trying to do with this Lenny Bruce character and bringing in a real character is because the comedy that she does, there is absolutely no way that comedy would have been able to have been performed by a woman in 1958 when the show was set. So it goes from being quite a realistic portrayal of women in the 50s to then quite an unrealistic portrayal.
Oh, certainly when she's on fire, it's a set that could light up a comedy club today.
Well, I've actually got issues with the stand-up comedy in this as well. Like, it's good in a TV show context, but you wouldn't pay money to see that as stand-up. But I've never seen a show fictionally be able to really give good stand-up.
I thought it looked like an open mic night to me in parts.
It's pretty mediocre comedy.
Yeah, it's mediocre when she's bad, but when she's bombing, it's meant to be showing a comic bombing as well.
Yeah. Well, the bombing's realistic, but and also the other character who actually is the most interesting character in the show, Susan Myson, who is played by Alex Borstein, who plays her agent in a kind of little bit kind of, I think it's fair to say, potentially lesbian or at least queer kind of woman. She wouldn't have really... she probably didn't exist in the 50s either, and certainly the two of them together wouldn't have existed.
I think you underestimate Bohemian New York in its deep fringes. I'm willing to accept the possibility of some of those characters existing.
Yeah, but I don't think they exist together. There is absolutely... I think it would be highly unlikely that a character like Susie was able to promote and make a success of a female comic in that time.
Well, she hasn't promoted or made a success out of it yet.
Yeah, but that's where it's going.
Maybe. This is by Amy Sherman Palladino. I think I've got that name right. Who's responsible for the Gilmore Girls, which I love and you hate.
Well, I don't hate it. I just think it's just fairly dull television and...
Oh, but the conversation, it's so witty.
The conversation, this is actually my problem with this show as well, I think it works better here than Gilmore Girls. The conversation is unrealistic. It's not how people talk to each other.
No, but it's how we wish we talked to each other.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that in this context.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the boobs?
What do you mean? She
gets her boobs out in episode 1. Did you feel that was gratuitous or in context or justifiable?
Oh, yeah, it plays into this whole... Well, this is what I'm saying, though. There's absolutely no way a female comic would have been able to do that in 1958.
She did get arrested for it.
Yeah, but she would have been arrested for a lot more, I think, than what she was. Yeah, so there's elements of it that it strays into this kind of unrealistic world that I'm not sure entirely works as a concept.
I honestly feel you're underestimating how far ahead of the rest of the world Soho and Greenwich of New York in the 1950s were.
Well, I disagree with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say about it?
There's absolutely no evidence of a female comic like that existing in the 50s.
Where have you been looking for that evidence?
Well, all of the comics from that time had to do this kind of Phyllis Diller shtick routine that relied on physical comedy or character comedy.
Mm.
They
talk about that in the
women
show
weren't allowed to do the same things that men
Yeah,
were.
but I'm saying that I don't have a comprehensive survey of every open mic night in downtown New York in the 1950s.
Well, it's not very believable to me. Sure. And that's my problem with the show.
Okay.
And I think that my other problem is that when it's bland, it's fairly...
Oh, it's a snooze fest.
It's fairly unoriginal.
Yeah.
But, I have bagged it out quite a bit, but it's a reasonably enjoyable watch. I'm probably more interested to see what the next season does, because I think that kind of middle part of the show...
I think it'll be better structured, because at least they'll know what they're making from the start, and I think it was... reasonably obvious that the funding model for the show changed mid-production, and that led to some lumpiness. Which is a weird thing to be able to see unfold before your eyes, I guess. But I will watch season 2.
Yeah, I'll watch season 2.
There you go. Okay. Well, no, I'd say it's a 3.5 stars.
I'm giving it 3 stars.
Okay. Well, there you go. We're actually quite close on that, aren't we? Booyah. So what's next?
Ocean's 8.
Yes.
Is that it? It's just a sigh.
Yes, indeed. I thought there was a lot of things that were a lot of fun about this. As a all-female led heist film, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it making James Corden look nice and reasonable, I really disliked. And I disliked the fact he was in it. But he is only in it very late in the movie. It's a bit like Lord of the Rings. It has more endings than you know what to do with, doesn't it?
I mean, this is nothing original from a heist movie, and it is very much like in the same vein as all the other Oceans films.
Well, except it's a ladies' heist movie, so it's all about fashion and jewellery. Which I thought was a little sexist and condescending, frankly.
Yeah,
and if I'm thinking it's sexist and condescending, I mean, geez.
I've read that as well, actually, that other people had that criticism, and that, I've got to be honest, that didn't bother me at all. Because, frankly, if you're going to have a movie that has 8 female, what would you call people that commit heists?
Thieves.
What would you call women that commit heists?
Thieves.
There seems to be some word like thievists or something that we could gender, but we won't. But if you're going to see a movie about 8 female thieves committing a major heist, I reckon your audience is probably going to be people that are interested in the Met Gala ball, which is where the heist takes place. So I felt they played to the audience there I mean, yeah, maybe it is condescending, but for God's sakes, we're marketed at every day. This was the least offensive form of marketing.
Okay, I mean, you got the issue that slightly unrealistic. All of the women involved in this heist are beauties of their generation.
Yeah, but I mean,
Sandra Bullock, Kate Blanchett, in the older bracket, the younger ones. I mean, they are all of them famously beautiful women, and so they're together collaborating. I guess going to the Met Gala is the only place they won't stand out in the crowd.
Yeah, well, exactly. And also, Ocean's 11, I'm sorry, but there's some pretty handsome folks going around.
Yeah, but handsome dudes are allowed on construction sites, whereas beautiful women attract a lot more attention.
All right, next time we walk past a construction site and we see a George Clooney and a Brad Pitt lookalike, call out, because I'm giving up my day job and I'm getting on a high-vis vest because you do not see that.
Oh, come on, there's plenty of good-looking dudes on construction sites. There's plenty of slobs as well, I'll give you that. But there's a reasonable number of good-looking dudes. Hello, Jono. They're out there.
Anyway, I've got to say the Met Gala ball fashion jewellery thing didn't offend me.
Sure.
It's a mainstream movie. I think there's an expectation that you're going to play to kind of mainstream tastes, and they did that. What I actually found a bit offensive about it was that you're at the Met Gala ball and it should be way more freaking exciting than what it was, and that was the problem. It just didn't have a lot of wow factor fun going on. There was a bit of it, but it wasn't fun and over the top as it should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I found it as a moderately competent heist film. I mean, the more you think about it, the more enormous problems there are with it. But all the other Ocean films have enormous problems as well. I guess the most egregious for me is that Sandra Bullock orchestrating the heist as a known and recently released from prison heist artist.
Oh, come on, she put on a blonde wig and did a German accent.
Sure.
She disguised herself.
But fundamentally, if she was actually organising that heist, she would have been 20 miles away, very prominently in public, nowhere near the scene of the crime. Putting herself at the scene of the crime was the dumbest thing she could possibly do.
They had to have her there.
You know.
They had to have her there in a nice dress.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, so it kind of fails a heist, and then I don't want to be too spoily, but then it turns out there was a heist within a heist, and
but that's the
and that's completely beyond any realm of possibility.
I actually think probably one of my issues with the film was that I felt that Sandra Bullock, who in it is meant to be Danny Ocean's sister, so that's the loose connection to the other Ocean's movie, and Cate Blanchett, they play these kind of long-term friends. That relationship, those actresses were like starving to develop that relationship between each other, and it just doesn't go anywhere. They're good actresses. If they had good script, that could have actually been a really quite a meaningful relationship that developed.
I don't know. I would say to that you've got plenty of. I'm thinking of a lot of movies with Michael Caine in it, where they're doing some crimes, they're being some villains. The leads in those movies don't develop a relationship. They're there to do a professional job.
It just didn't feel. I felt like there was more there that should have been there.
Okay.
It does tick some pretty good diversity boxes, though. They have Rihanna playing.
I'm not interested in diversity boxes being ticked for their own sake myself.
Yes, I wasn't meaning to say that in a sarcastic way,
yeah.
frankly. In fact, I actually think the more diverse characters are the more interesting characters in the movie.
Maybe. I mean, it's really a lot about Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett.
Yeah, which is, like I was saying, unfortunate because they don't really...
Yeah.
I don't know, it just doesn't sort of go anywhere, that relationship. What else do we say about it? I don't know.
Look, it's in the category of a lot of movies we talk about on this show where if you haven't seen it, it's on your streaming service, it's Friday night, you're wondering what to do, yeah, watch it, you'll enjoy it.
You know, I feel like this is the kind of movie you put on when no one in the room can agree on what movie to watch.
And everyone's already watched every other movie and doesn't want to watch it again. And it'll solve a lot of problems. Yeah, and it'll probably make a lot of money in the rental secondary market.
You can have toilet breaks without having to pause it.
Yeah, you come back, they're still doing the same stuff. How'd that get there? We don't know. What are they doing? I don't know.
Who cares?
Harmless fun, though.
It is harmless fun. I'm a bit... What are you going to give it?
Flat 3.
I think I'm going to have to give it a 2.
A 2?
Well, I don't do half
stars. Come
on,
you're giving a bad mark. You're going to have to flesh that out a bit.
Well, I just have. I said I felt as though it didn't...
A failure to develop Kate and Sandra's relationship.
And also, I was quite disappointed that they're at the Met Gala and I wasn't that excited.
I think the slideshow on the News Limited website is about as exciting as the Met Gala actually gets.
I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry. when that happens, I'm reading those. Who's that woman? You don't know her, but she does this very funny commentary of it. All of those kinds of Instagram people. Well, I'm into all that. Yeah,
right. I think that's as exciting as it gets. I think actually being at it is much less exciting than getting a curated feed of it.
But they could have done a curated feed of it in there. We've got Kim Kardashian coming in. There's some good cameos in there, and they're just meh.
Yeah, right.
They could have made them really funny and entertaining. And...
Alright, well, Sheridan's taking a sledgehammer to the sisterhood with a 2-star review for an all-female high school.
It doesn't offer anything. It's not about them being women. I think actually all the Ocean's movies are pretty rubbish too. But it doesn't offer anything new to a heist film. I'm not giving it an extra star just because it's got chicks in it.
Okay. Alright. Sheridan stands firm. Chicks must stand for themselves. So what's next?
Oh, we've started?
Yeah.
Better Call Saul.
So, Better Call Saul. What season?
4.
Season 4. Now, I'm going to take the audience on a bit of a journey here.
Gosh.
Not a long journey.
Can I go to the toilet?
You just go to the left. So, I didn't watch Breaking Bad for a number of years. It just wasn't available. Like, the box set was like $120.
Oh yes, before streaming. What a time!
Yeah, before streaming, or I had Netflix, but it wasn't on Netflix. So
and you were not the illegal downloader, so you had to live in your little Australian bubble where content was restricted to free to air TV.
Oh, what I was willing to pay for. Yeah,
I don't think it ever went on Foxtel. Breaking Bad.
I think it did, but anyway, I wasn't watching.
It was
Foxtel.
late.
I didn't have Foxtel. But so I came to it quite late, only a couple of years ago, and then I watched it non-stop. I think I probably watched all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad.
It's a brutal roller coaster.
Well, that was it. In like 10 days, I watched the whole lot. And that was a really powerful experience, and I loved it. And it was amazing. I did actually watch like the first episode of Breaking Bad when it first came out, and just that first episode left me cold, and then everyone else was raving about it. I was like, meh.
Breaking Bad, when you watch it in hindsight, it seems better, the first episodes, than what they really were.
Yeah, and the other thing I guess was I read it as being just a story about a guy getting sick and dealing with America's horrific to anyone else's healthcare system, and I found that really depressing, and you need to get further into it. My point is, Breaking Bad I took as a wild, wild ride. Better Call Saul, which is such a brave spin-off to do from such a masterful show, particularly as a prequel, we're having to watch slowly. It's taken us 4 years.
Yeah, because we're watching episode week by week.
Yeah, episodes week by week.
It's old school.
And then we get 10 episodes, and then we have to wait a year for the next one. It's a totally different viewing experience for me, which I am finding that difference interesting.
Yeah, see, I mean, I watch Breaking Bad the old school way of week by week.
Week by week, yeah. So it makes it actually very hard for me to compare it because my personal pacing of the stories is so different. Sometimes I even forget they're related because I would say the storytelling of Better Call Saul is probably better than Breaking Bad's, but it is slower and more tortuous and less fireworks.
It's a funny show, actually, to watch. I wonder what people would think of the show if they hadn't watched Breaking Bad, because I think that as a standalone show...
I think it would have died.
No, I think as a standalone show it works.
I just don't think people would have had the patience to let it unfold if it didn't have the pedigree it has.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've never spoken to anyone that's never watched Breaking Bad and watched it, so... And I mean, the thing that's so good about watching the show when you've seen Breaking Bad is you know where the character Saul Goodman ends up. You know
the
how
end point.
Completely corrupted and horrible and...
I kind of liked Saul in Breaking Bad. He wasn't the worst character in Breaking Bad by a long shot.
No, and he was a pretty minor character compared to a lot of others.
Yeah.
So
he was flashy, but he was also reliable. So in some ways, he was actually good in Walter White's world in that he could go to Saul with a problem. Saul never sold him out. Saul never tried to kill him. Saul was, in that world, one of the better dudes going around.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he does have a very weird moral code.
Or at least a reliability to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I don't think I had anything.
No? You're all done?
We'll just... No, I've got other things I need to say.
Okay.
To be honest, I sort of sometimes think I like Better Call Saul more than Breaking Bad.
The characters are so much more finely drawn and are all so complex. I can't think of a single character in Better Call Saul who is uniformly light or dark. They're all very real human beings.
Yeah. They're very all complex characters.
And all capable of good and bad.
Yes.
And I'm thinking particularly like Harry Hamlin, the slick lawyer.
Harry Hamlin is one of the best characters in the show.
Yeah. For all that, he's
fairly decent though.
But he's incredibly self-indulgent. He's incredibly
the thing
shallow.
is, right, this is the funny thing.
This is why he's so well written.
But the funny thing about him, right, is he is completely unlikable, but morally, he is probably one of the better characters. Whereas Saul Goodman, morally, is a horrid... objectively speaking, he's a fairly horrid person.
Oh, you see, I would say on some levels... Saul or Jimmy is actually trying to make a better world in funny ways. Like at the very last episode, towards the end of this season, when he was overseeing, in a very token capacity, the scholarships that his dead brother's estate was paying for. He wanted to give the girl from the wrong side of the tracks a chance. And all the other fine, upstanding pillars of the community just wanted to give the children of other pillars of the community
but that's all about his own self-redemption. It was a decision that was wholly about proving to everyone else that he was okay.
No, but
it was self-indulgent.
I would also say that he is interested on some very fundamental levels in trying to make the world a better place, in the way that the indulgent and indulged upper classes, as depicted, have no interest in making the world a better place. They just want to keep the world exactly as it is because it suits them. And I don't view that as any sort of moral high ground.
Yeah, well, anyway, but the fact is, Saul Goodman's a likeable, but morally questionable, whereas I think Harry is... Well, maybe he's... Yeah, I don't know. Well, this actually proves the point. They're all extremely complex characters.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Harry is your classical example of what you'd call lawful good in the Dungeons and Dragons alignment spectrum.
He's a classical, stereotypical, top-tier lawyer.
Yeah. And sometimes he does actually make principled stands to do good things, and sometimes he's just an out-and-out bastard because it suits him. And that's just one character out of a cast of many. I mean, Kim Wexler, I mean, that's an acting tour de force.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this when I was trying to think about some things for reviewing this. I don't think they're great at writing the female characters, though.
There are very few of them.
I mean...
If it wasn't for Kim, this would be a sausage fest and a half.
Yeah, but Breaking Bad, the female characters were fairly...
shrill.
Yeah, well, there is actually not a lot of depth or complexity to them.
Mm. Well, the wife just, receives Walter's monologues. And,
well, she doesn't actually really develop anything meaningful until 3 or 4 seasons in, when I think they got so much crap about how horrible she was. And, I mean, there was a whole lot of internet trolls that really hated her unnecessarily, and that actress actually copped some really full-on abuse.
There are just some disgusting people out there in the fandoms,
But I don't think they're great at writing the women. I've got to say, it's funny, I can forgive them not being great at writing the women when they write the rest of the show so bloody well.
Yeah, look, I mean, at least there is Kim, who is an interesting character. I mean, and so well acted, because she is so prim with her blonde ponytail and her blue eyes, and her track to high-flying lawyerdom that she drifts in and out of, but it's the possibilities. The staircase is still open for her, and yet she's got such a bad side. She loves Jimmy/Saul. She loves working the cons with him. She just can't help it. She enjoys it.
There is also an element, though, of she understands his struggle, because she's struggled, but in a different way, to succeed in the legal career, and she's not. She can't quite make herself go out with the Harry Hamlin type. She's not willing to go that far and give up that kind of... She's not willing to live the life completely.
Yeah. And, I mean, you also have this issue that confronts a lot of practicing lawyers, particularly those who do criminal defence work, where they might know their client's guilty, but, they know there are people getting away with worse, so they'll still try and get their client off. Yeah, I mean, I understand lawyers have a duty to try and get their client defended, but they'll even do pro bono work for someone they know is guilty just because they think, well... Yeah.
One thing that does frustrate me a little about the show is it's a very unrealistic portrayal about how lawyers work, because one minute Kim's doing this high-flying, massive pharmaceutical company's legal work, and then the next she's down at the court defending petty criminal number 852.
Yeah, corporate lawyers who can open bank branches are going to struggle to
Absolutely no way that you're crossing over practice areas to that extent.
Yeah.
All at the same time, like maybe you do them at different stages of your career or whatever, but yeah, that's not how it works. And I find that very annoying.
Well, they're trying to make an entertaining show, and a legal career is not the most entertaining
And
thing
that
in the world.
huge client that she works for is just not hiring her as sole practitioner. Kim with her paralegal, who's pretty rubbish. They're only going to a law firm.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
There's no bank in the world that's picking up a shingle hanging sole practitioner.
Yeah, it's just not.
Yeah.
Even in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they do bang on about the majesty of the Albuquerque legal system, and they at times it's shown to be a well-resourced operation. Having said that,
I could talk about this show for days, though. I mean, it's great.
And I guess one thing is because if you love Breaking Bad, you get to see a lot of the development of characters, and geez, they're struggling with the timelines to hold it together because, of course, this is all meant to be set years before Breaking Bad, and Breaking Bad was years ago, and now they're asking actors to play much younger versions of themselves.
That's true. Saul's struggling.
Bob
Odenkirk, he's struggling to look younger.
Yeah, but even Nacho, the Salamanca family thug.
True.
There's a bunch of them. Augustus Fring, who is one of my favourite characters in the show. He's just such a great guy, even though he's a drug lord. Just little things like the way he protects the staff in his front businesses from the bad things in his world. You just want to work for Gus Fring.
He's fairly ageless, actually, though. I think
he's quite ageless. Yeah. But I'm just saying, he's the guy you want as your boss. I don't care that he's a drug lord. I want to work for him. He's a good dude who looks after his people. There's.
I think actually maybe all that stuff with all the Salamanca crew and all that.
They never bring it back to Saul so far. We're 4 seasons in, and it's sort of happening in different tracks. And I wish there was a bit more.
I think you'd struggle with that if you hadn't watched Breaking Bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that actually doesn't have a lot of the momentum of that storyline's a little funny. But the only reason you kind of
it's going to come together.
Well, yeah, and you're kind of interested to see where they came from. Yeah. I feel as though the character of Mike, maybe his story arc's a little. I found that you don't really kind of understand why he ends up doing the work he does.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's absolutely say, if you have not watched Breaking Bad, do not watch Better Call Saul.
I don't. Why no? I'm curious. Watch it and tell us.
Emails to gmtrpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, so yeah, if you're a real sucker for punishment, watch it the wrong way around. But I would personally absolutely say, if you don't know what the hell we're talking about, watch Breaking Bad. Then you've got 4 seasons of Better Call Saul ready to watch. So you've got like 20 days of TV lined up if you really want to do an intensive deep dive. More realistically, don't do that. That's a bit much. I was a bit of an emotional wreck at the end of Breaking Bad.
Some weird dreams.
And I honestly thought the ending was a little disappointing as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, endings on those kinds of shows always are, aren't they?
Yeah, it probably deserved better, but it was what it was. Okay, stars. I'm thinking 4.5.
I'm going to give it 5 stars.
5 stars. Is that with a caveat that if you could give half stars in your strange little moral universe?
No, I'm going to give it 5.
An unalloyed 5 stars from Sheridan.
Yep.
Okay, 4.5 from me. Just because the divorcing of the story, you're almost watching 2 shows at the same time. With the crime gang stuff happening so separate from Saul, at least in this season. So that's a nitpick on my part. This is top notch, top drawer television, and if you haven't been watching it, then you should get it on. Alright, so that is the end of this podcast. Thank you very much for listening all the way through, if you're hearing our voices at this point. Emails asking us to review shows, welcome at gmtrpodcast@gmail.com. Also leave comments on our website or the Facebook or the Twitter. Or even on the YouTube. We have a weird little small following going on there. Don't worry, you're not missing anything.
I think you should call anyone that listens to our YouTube weird. I think they're the coolest ones.
They're the coolest ones. I would note that, don't worry, you're not missing out on anything. It's just a still image with our voices on it. So it's exactly like listening
What's
to...
the image?
It's our cover image of the stuff from that apocalyptic bike ride a few years ago. Yeah. So it's my bum crack and Sheridan trying to talk to a friend of mine.
Well...
So it's pretty
riveting
exciting.
TV.
There's worse on YouTube. Okay, on that note, we're going to let you folks go. We hope to be back. Next week might be a stretch because we've got a lot of TV to watch to get anything ready for you.
It's really hard, actually, trying to watch so much TV.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that. If only I was 22 and... Well, 21 and trying to study for uni.
Or avoid
I would have watched
studying.
8 seasons a week.
All right, thanks, folks. We'll see. You'll hear us soon.